Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my creative space. In today's video, I'm going to do a wrap up of my month of September, of all the books that I've read, some games that I've played, and a show that I just started. I will forewarn you, if you do hear some children screaming in the background, I do apologize. My neighbor is currently having like a birthday celebration and they have like a jumpy house and everything, so the kids are having fun. I don't blame them for having fun, but if you do hear some of that beautiful ambiance, that's what it is. So as always, I'm going to put my stats over here for you. This month, I actually read some books. I know last month for August, I didn't have any books completed to chat with you about. So I read and completed 6 books, and I went back into reading more Stephen Graham Jones as I am working through his backlist. There was a book that I also read for the Literally Dead Book Club, which I will chat about, and I also will link that down below if you want to see the live show and the full detailed discussion with spoilers for that. But let's start with book 1. I read a novella by Stephen Graham Jones, which was Night of the Mannequin. This one was a pretty quick read for me. It is basically following a group of friends, and part of the friend group wants to prank their other friend who works at a movie theater, and so they end up getting this mannequin and dressing them up and putting them in one of the theaters while she's on shift, and the prank kind of goes sideways and some nefarious things happen. I will say it is a much slower, more internally processed sort of horror novel, and I think that's how a lot of Stephen Graham Jones writing is. It feels very personal to whatever point of view we are following, and for this one it's the same. I don't think there's as much action I think that certain people would expect with the premise of this novel, but it definitely had a very creepy, eerie vibe. There's something about mannequins that are really strange and creepy to me, and that's funny because one of the other books that I read this month had some like scenes with mannequins in it, and I didn't put that connection until now. But yeah, it was a great novella. I think it's one that I would highly suggest to people who like a sort of group of friends. I think this friend group was so strong and so fun to read from, and just to see this thematic of coming of age that I feel like Stephen Graham Jones likes to write about often, getting to see it with a character that has a strong group of friends was really nice, and I enjoyed it, despite it being kind of creepy. I think this isn't as scary as some of the Stephen Graham Jones books I've read, but I really enjoyed my time with that, and if I did not say before, I ended up giving it a 4-star rating. And then the next book I completed was a carryover from August, and that was the 11th volume of the Apothecary Diaries. This is an ongoing series in anime manga form as well, but because the light novels I think started first, it definitely story-wise has the most published in English right now, so you can get more of the story than you can with the manga currently, and obviously the anime in season 2 I think only covers up to the 3rd volume of the light novel, but I've been really enjoying my time following our main character Mao Mao, who is an apothecary, and seeing her get into these political situations and helping uncover certain mysteries within the court that she is involved with. I think this one, thus far, light novel-wise, has been my favorite because there have been certain character reveals in this one for side characters that I think for a few volumes now felt inconsequential, but they became quite a main focus in this book, and getting to read who they really are character-wise was so intriguing to me. And then there was a moment towards probably the last 20% that really shocked me. I read that like paragraph that the reveal happened, and I honestly gasped. I gasped, and then I reread the paragraph because I was like, am I reading this right? It was so fun. I hadn't had a reaction like that probably since like the very beginning of the story. So getting to have such a fun and surprising reveal like that was really amazing, and it makes me really excited to see the direction of this story. It definitely leans more political, but because I like Mao Mao so much as a character, I really enjoy the kind of slower paced political intrigue that's going on in this. So the next book that I read for this month is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This one is book 1 in the Indian Lake trilogy, and as I've said before, I am working my way through Stephen Graham Jones' backlist, and this series is the next project that I'm tackling with his work. And in this first book, we're following Jade Daniels. The very first chapter, we're actually introduced to two characters that kind of are not involved with her, but they are within the small town that she lives in, and some very wild things happen at the start. And then we jump to being introduced to Jade Daniels, who is a high school senior, and she is obsessed with horror movies, and she just knows deep in her gut that something has been triggered within the town. And because she's so knowledgeable about horror films, she can see all these patterns that are happening and that are going to lead to a giant event that will probably lead to a massacre. And so with Jade, we're following this very like stream of consciousness internal monologue as she's just fighting her way to survive as a high schooler. And there are certain elements of like her own trauma and her working through kind of suppression of the things that she's gone through, but also trying to like help her community in a way, like go through these traumatic events themselves. There are kind of similar elements that I found within I Was a Teenage Slasher and in this one, and just having to be in the mind of Jade and having her question her reality consistently was such a chaotic and sometimes exhausting read, and I felt very connected with Jade, and I really wanted her to succeed with whatever she was trying to do for the community. This one ended up being a 3.75 star. I'm not somebody who's well versed in horror films, as visual horror just doesn't sit well with me. Like, I cannot handle that because I am so paranoid and it really freaks me out. But I don't think I felt that lost when Jade was referencing those films. There's little tidbits that come at the end that kind of give you a clue of like what the thematics of those films are. So I didn't ever feel like I was out of my depth with this book, but I really enjoyed the way Stephen Graham Jones wrote Jade and having her process certain traumatic events in her life and having that slowly be revealed, and having Jade kind of face that towards the end of the book was such a journey. And there was a lot of crazy things that happened in this one. There were certain gory scenes that I was like, this is quite intense, but it probably isn't the most intense that I've read from Stephen Graham Jones. I think this is definitely something on a reread, it will really grow more on me. And the last Stephen Graham Jones that I read for this month is The Killer on the Road and The Babysitter Lives, which I did say that I read for the Literally Dead book club. I think overall, each of these books, after discussion with them, were like a 4.5, but I think collection-wise, I'm gonna round it up and give it a 5 star. In The Babysitter Lives, this one we follow a high schooler who is studying for her SATs, but the night before the SAT, she actually agrees to babysit these twins so that their parents can go out and have like a first date after so ever long of having their twin children. And she decides like she can take up this job, it's super easy, and then when she puts the kids to bed, she'll be able to study for her test tomorrow and everything will be good. But there ends up being something kind of creepy and unsettling that happens in the house, and she realizes maybe her and the kids aren't alone. I think it's one of the most unsettling, intriguing, chaotic haunted houses that I've ever read from. And honestly, the twists and turns in this one weren't what I was expecting, and it felt quite long and arduous, but it was something that really worked for me. Like, the whole time I read The Babysitter Lives, it just made me feel so claustrophobic, so trapped, so afraid for our main character, Charlotte, and getting to see her move through this book as someone who's only like, what, 17, and having her have to take care of like 6-year-olds. So children taking care of children, oh my gosh, so tense, so scary. And there were parts in regards to the horror that were just like heart at the bottom of my stomach. I felt sick. Like, it was so intense, this book, but it was so good of like a horror experience for me that I had to give it a 4.5. And then discussing it with Kayla and Brie, fantastic. I think it was one of my favorite collections to ever have talked about with other people about, because there was just so much to dissect in the story. And then the one that I read first was actually Killer on the Road. And this one, I felt at the beginning that I'd read it, we follow our main character, Harper, who is kind of running away from home. And as she's trying to dip out of town, she runs into 2 of her best friends who end up being like, oh, we can take you to wherever your next stop is and we'll drive together. And then they end up going on the road trip with her 2 best friends, her ex-boyfriend, and her little sister. And unfortunately, as they're going down this road, there is a serial killer on the loose. I think this one was definitely a grower on me. When I first completed it, it was a 3-star. But then when Kayla had like sent out like the questions for what we were discussing for the live show, I was really thinking about the thematics and just the characters in this book. And honestly, after a discussion and like talking about those themes that we all kind of saw within the book, it had to be a 4.5. I think I just really enjoy the way Stephen Graham Jones layers grief and coming of age and also culture within these stories, and how it just subtly grows within your mind as you continue thinking about the book. This book specifically, I think, was probably the most gory Stephen Graham Jones book that I'd read. And I think for all of the other Stephen Graham Jones books that I'd read, there are gory moments that is just like, wow, that was quite intense. But for this one, it was consistently intense, consistently gory. The serial killer on the road that they kind of run into is named Bucket Mouth. And I won't say how and what he does to his victims, because you just have to experience it yourself. In chapter 0, we do meet said serial killer and we get to see how it unfolds. My jaw was on the floor. I was so shocked. But I think my only gripe about The Killer on the Road and also The Babysitter Lives is that it did feel quite long. I think it could have been cut and have still held the same weight. But yeah, it was just such a experience to be had. There were so many moments that I was just like, did that really happen? That was really insane. And also, in regards to this one, I really enjoyed it because of the fact that it had a found family sort of aspect in it, much like Night of the Mannequin. And if you do like to follow a group of friends, this one is a great one. I think their dynamic was just so solid. The characters were really built out. Despite us like just having met them at the very beginning of the book, it feels like from the moment you meet them that you really know who they are as characters. They have such a strong voice. A really fun one. This one is definitely a collection I would suggest people read during October, which is when this video will come up. But this is fantastic for October because of that spooky, gory kind of content that is in here. And also for the fact that I think it's probably the most quickly paced Stephen Graham Jones that I think I've read. But if you want to know more in-depth spoiler thoughts about this one from myself, Kayla, and Brie, I will link the live show down below and you can click on that and watch that discussion. The next book that I read is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This one was my second chance with Nat. I believe it was last year that I'd read Nestlings, and I ended up DNFing that because I just found myself not really caring or feeling invested or involved with the story there. But I'd heard so many people talking about When the Wolf Comes Home and how it's probably their favorite horror of the year. And, you know, after hearing quite a few people online talk about it, and then I think my friend Michelle had read it and I saw her Goodreads review, and I think she gave it a 5-star. I was like, okay, I think I am very interested now to give this a try. So I read When the Wolf Comes Home, and this one follows our main character, Jess, who is trying to gain her footing as an actress. So at the moment, she is working at a diner, and she ends up seeing this little boy like on the street, and he seems very visibly shaken and afraid. And I don't know, due to some sort of internal Good Samaritan energy she has, she decides to help this young boy. But unfortunately for her, the little boy is running away from his father, who is actually a wolf. And that ensues so many different chaotic things and events that happen within, I think, a span of like, I think the book is maybe less than a week, it feels. Because, you know, all these kind of events happen during one night shift, and then certain things happen very, very succinctly and very quickly. And it was such a chaotic read. I think because this one was more fast paced and more of a modern horror versus Nestling's feeling almost more gothic in energy. I think the quicker pace and like the breathlessness that happened in this book felt more up my alley in regards to the mood that I was in when I picked it up. There happens to be many events that happen to Jess at the very beginning. She actually is grieving the loss of her father and trying to process that, as he wasn't somebody who was really in her life, but she still feels that grief of the loss of him. But then something happens to her at work. She leaves early and then she runs into this boy. And so it's just like one thing after another. And it feels like she doesn't really have a moment of reprieve, because in one end, she's trying to take care of herself and figure out certain things for herself. But then she's like, well, now I have this little boy that I need to like help take care of. And I think he's only like 5. So, you know, there's certain things that with 5-year-olds, you can't just be all willy-nilly with them. Like, there are certain things that 5-year-olds just don't understand about the world. And she doesn't know this kid, and to like take him in and then him being like, sorry, my dad's this wolf who's just tearing people up and eating them up outside. She's like, what the hell? What is this? And it was one of the most chaotic 20% of a book that I'd ever read. Just like on the elements of plot wise, there is so much that goes on in here, and there are certain elements that were very creepy. There was something, this is the book that had some sort of mannequin scene. I won't say what exactly it was, but yeah, it was just very strange and off-putting getting to experience certain scenes with her and this young boy as they're like trying to flee and run away and find safety with each other. And there were a lot of very heartfelt moments as she is trying to connect to this young boy and help him feel safe, but also figure out how she can bring herself to safety and not put her life at risk. I ended up giving this one a 4.5 star, not fully a 5-star, because I think I just didn't get that 5-star feeling with this book, but it definitely is one that I highly recommend. And I think one that is quite a quick read. So if you want something that's very action forward, very plot forward, this one is a great one for you. Do check trigger warnings though, because there are elements of like medical issues that our main character is going through that could cause you anxiety. I mean, depending on your trigger. For me, I did have to pause because there was just some intense things going on within her internal monologue, but I think it was such a great one, and I can see why this is a horror that a lot of people are really enjoying this year. And then for my last book of the month, I read The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This book was something that I've been putting off for a while, but one of my friends was talking to me about how this is just so vibey and great for the autumn season, so I decided to go ahead and pick it up. And this, I won't talk too much in depth because I feel like so many people know the Raven Boys and the Raven Cycle in general. This is very much a character-focused read. There is a plot that is happening because our main character, they're kind of a group of friends that get together to solve kind of a mystery in this one, and it's not fully solved in book one. There are 4 books in this series, but getting to know each character as you're reading this story, it just feels almost nostalgic despite me not having read this before. But it has that very nostalgic friend group vibe that YA books, I think, do really well. They do such a good job with building a cast of characters and having you feel so involved and invested in it. I think this is a very great pick for autumn, and I'm excited to pick up book 2 and carry on with these group of friends and see where we get with them uncovering the mystery that they started investigating in this book. Okay, so that was the 6 books that I read this month. I am going to go on and move on to the 2 games that I started in the month of September, but I will first begin with Hollow Knight, which is a game that I did want to start for the month of fall. It is a platformer game, and we get to play as this little bug. I think they're all bugs. I'm not entirely sure what type of bug our main character is, but he's very cute. And he's like running around, and I haven't gotten too far in the character storyline of this one, but I think this is such a good atmosphere for autumn. The music is so beautiful, and there's certain elements visually that is so cute, but the color choices of it all, it does feel a little eerie, a little creepy. Not too creepy, like it's not like a horror game, at least that I know of. And the gameplay and game style honestly surprised me. It seems quite easy as a platform, but then once you get involved with certain enemies, there are moments where you feel like, oh, I'm way underpowered for this. It is a little frustrating though when you die, you kind of lose all your loot that you got, and you have to kind of quickly run your way back to where you were to kind of gain back the coins and everything that you got. But overall, I think it is such a nice vibe, and I can't wait to get further into the story and kind of see what's going on. And then the second game that I've been playing for the month of September is Hades. This one as well, the reason why I picked it up is because Hades 2 recently released, and so many of the Hades fans had been talking about this new release. And my friend Miranda actually really enjoys the game. And I was kind of going back and forth with getting the game because I'd never really played a roguelike. And when she was describing the gameplay loop, I was like, would that really frustrate me? I'm unsure. But I kind of wanted to get a game for audiobook reading, and this one seemed to be the right kind of vibe. And in the middle of the month, Hades ended up going on sale, so I only got it for $6, which is such a steal. And I've been playing it like nonstop. I've completely paused my replay of Animal Crossing, and I've just been playing Hades. And even without an audiobook, I will just sit there and play it. I think the music is stunning. I think the visuals are beautiful. I think the fighting style is great. They give you so many options in regards to weapons and what you like as a player. You can do hand-to-hand combat. You can have kind of long distance range weapons, and it's so fun. The basic concept of this is that you are playing as Hades' son who is trying to escape the underworld. And in order to escape, you have to go through, I believe, 4 levels. I've only ever made it to level 3 and then ended up dying right when I got to level 3. So I don't know, maybe there's more than 4 levels. But basically, you go through all these levels and you fight all of these monsters that Hades unleashes because he's like, well, you can't escape. You are my son, and this is your destiny to be here with me, and I don't understand why you're trying to leave. And it is such a fun game. I think in the very beginning, it is quite disheartening because you like go through a few levels and then you kind of get absolutely obliterated because you just don't have enough power to get through these dungeons. But I think as you continue playing, you get power-ups, you get these gifts from other gods who are trying to help you escape the underworld, and it helps you boost your attack power or helps you boost your defense. Each game loop just feels so different despite like encountering similar characters and similar enemies. The way you play each time is really impacted by what power-ups you receive with each level. And I've just been really enjoying something that is a little bit more mind off. There is a bit of dialogue that goes on in this game, but I think it definitely is one that you can play when you are reading audiobooks or when you just want something that's not as intense. I say that and then you're fighting for your life at every level, but it's not as like brain forward, as like something that's more puzzle adjacent. And then for my last update and wrap up for you for the month of September, I ended up starting the Great British Bake Off, which is a show that I put on my fall plans. And I was like, okay, if I don't end up liking it that much, then I'll probably stop subscribing to Netflix for a little while until like more new things that I want to watch end up coming up on the platform. But I watched season 5, is it season 13, season 15, whichever is the most current season. I didn't realize that it was a week by week release. So I watched the first 3 episodes and then it was like, watch this other show. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I was watching a new season that didn't have all the episodes out. So it's really fun to get to wait every week for Friday to come around and get to watch a new episode of the Great British Bake Off. I think the most current season, I really enjoy the group of people and just getting to see people cook pastries that I am very unaware of. I am American, and so there are certain things that they bake that I'm like, I've never heard of that in my life. And getting to see them do these technical challenges. If you've never seen the Great British Bake Off, basically it's a baking competition where it's more so home bakers are invited to the show. And you get to see them bake 3 separate things, their themes per episode. I think the first week the theme was cakes, so they got to start off with a cake that had to have certain elements to it. Let's say you had to have fruit in your cake, and they present that, and then the judges are like, oh, this is the person that we're really thinking is going to do very well this week. And then the second challenge is a technical challenge. So they are tasked to bake something that is more technical forward, but they aren't given necessarily in-depth instructions on how to make it. So you kind of have to use your judgment and your knowledge and baking skills from things that you've made prior in order to make the thing that the judges are asking you. Then the third bake is called a showstopper, which is you having more time to bake a certain type of cake, and then you are also having to put in mind what the visual outcome of your cake looks like. Obviously, each week it's not always cakes, but it kind of follows that same formula. And I think it's just so nice getting to see people's creativity in cooking. I don't think it's something that we get to see and experience day to day, at least, with how my life is going. It's not like I live in a baking shop, so I don't get to see this sort of visual creativity with food. And getting to see that on the show is so fun. And it's like, I didn't even imagine that we could make cake like that, or I didn't imagine these flavors being put together would be good. And then also, it's just so fun to see the camaraderie between the cast. I think with American shows, oftentimes there's so much catty competition and people who undermine each other. Whereas within the Great British Bake Off, there are moments where you get to see them help each other. I actually went back to start season 5, which is the most, the oldest one that they have on Netflix. But it's so nice to see them being like, oh, I finished 2 minutes early. Let me go help this other person put their cookies on the tray. Or let me help them decorate so that they can finish their cake on time. And getting to see that camaraderie, it's just so heartwarming. I really like it. It's a great show to play kind of in the background while I'm working or I'm doing other things. And it also sparks my own creativity and my own imagination. And it makes me excited to try other new things and bake new things. That is my wrap up for September. Quite a few things that I wanted to chat with you about. I am quite looking forward to October. I'm not sure how much I will be getting read in the month of October because I will be going on vacation. Once I'm back, I will chat with you about that. But I am filming a few reading vlogs for you, so do look forward to those. If you've made it this far and don't have anything else to say, let's put some bird emojis in the comment section down below for the Raven Boys. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!